Thanks everyone for joining us this wonderful Tuesday morning. Um, Too much of a morning for some of us, I know that, and I apologize. But I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. The topic today is authoring. Right, we've invited a couple of people um, who have been authoring with AEM Edge delivery services and document-based authoring, and we are here to exchange tips and ideas and experiences. And I think the best way to start is by going through a quick round of introduction with our invited guests. And Dennis, you're the first one on my screen, so I'm going to ask you for a quick introduction of yourself first. And we've been working together for, well, I think it's 3/4 of a year now. Um, but I would be really happy to hear a couple of words from you, and what you do.
Sure thing. Thanks, Lars. So my name is Dennis Belkrumis. I am a product manager in a pharmaceutical company. We have been sort of dipping our toes and working with integrating Adobe Franklin into one of our sort of formal offerings within our space to enable digital channels from websites. Of course, our usual offerings in the past has been very much WYSIWYG based, sort of your average authoring experience with what you see is what you get. So, having worked with Adobe Franklin for now about 9 months, as Lars mentioned, perhaps closer to 10 now, it's definitely been an interesting experience, right? The whole document-based editing, the native integrations, and using what you already have, what marketers are already familiar with on a day-to-day basis, has definitely been unorthodox, right, compared to the traditional solutions that we've been used to. So far, I think we have about 30 sites that are live almost on Adobe Franklin since this endeavor we started 9 months ago. And we have about 100+ sites, I think, that are in development. So all in all, we've been working closely with our Adobe partners in laying out all the foundations, building and integrating Adobe Franklin in our ecosystem. And of course, authoring, which is the topic for today, has been a big portion of that.
Excellent. Thanks, Dennis. Next one on my screen is Katrin, and yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. So I'm Katrin from Cognizant and Centric's marketing team. I think looking at the date, I think pretty much a year ago, we suddenly were informed in the marketing team, by the way, we are migrating the website and we need people to take over the authoring. So that was then me and Livia. So since then we migrated the main page and then the German page later on. So and as I basically take care of the entire German page. So I build it just like we did the migration of the English one first. So then
Right.
I rebuilt in January of this year the entire German page based on this. So this is when I learned by doing how everything worked, and it was a very exciting experience with Livia because obviously we were told how it worked, but you find out when you do it, and it was very surprise commands and what they do, and it was a very exciting experience. But also because I haven't worked with AEM with the traditional one before.
Okay.
So it was the first time we started this journey, and yeah, it was very very exciting. Most of the time,
Okay.
seeing what happened and how it evolved.
Good. Okay. Livia, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm with Katrin at Cognizant and Centric, and in previous lives I worked with the Oracle CMS, with WordPress, and with AM. So I've had that luxury. So I was able to kind of look at EDS and content and document-based authoring kind of with interesting perspectives. And I'm also a content marketer, so I live in Google Docs.
Right.
Like that is, I actually have Google Docs open right now on my second screen, and I was actually building something in EDS while we were waiting to start. So, so yeah, the experience was really interesting. I'm happy to be here. It's really nice to meet you all and talk about this. So it's me.
Excellent. Yeah. And Livia, I've seen you a couple of times in these calls.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
really happy to hear you speak today. And the last one of our invited guests is Dejan. Dejan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, so my name is Dejan. I work for Sunstar, which is a Japanese company. The headquarters are based in Switzerland here in Etua. And I'm working for the digital transformation department. I'm a tech guy, so I'm a really full stack web dev. So for me, we started to migrate to Adobe Franklin. I believe it was end of May, beginning of June. So we're still in the process of migrating our 3 corporate websites. But so far the experience was great. For me, the authoring is, it's easy because, I'm a tech guy. So, understanding these things was quite easy for me, but we heard quite a good feedbacks from our, let's say, authors. They're really loving the tool because, they live inside our ecosystem, which is SharePoint and all these, Word documents, Excel files. So they're really happy. We were using, initially we were like hosting our websites on Amazon and spending quite a lot of money just to be able to maintain them. So we couldn't even add new features or even post sometimes. So it was a struggle, just spending the whole budget trying to keep the site on live support. So now the speed is excellent, everything is good. The partnership with Adobe, the Satya, other members of the team, Jiang, so Sagar here was super great. So really have a good experience, working with Adobe, and we were already using AEM for other websites. We have the full team, behind it, and I know, I'm not really AEM guy myself, but Franklin is totally different, and we're just loving it.
Great.
So that's
Great.
it.
Great to hear that. Dejan, then I'm going to start with follow-up questions right with you. You said you're working for a Japanese company headquartered in Switzerland. And so my first question would be, what languages are you authoring in, and what does this entail for your authors?
So we first migrated the Sunstar Engineering website, and we have 7 languages there. So we have like quite a lot of languages, like some exotic languages, like Japanese, Chinese, Thai, Indonesian, right, German, Italian, and English, for example, and it's the same experience as authoring in English for them, I believe, and when we had to do the UAT, it was super easy for me, to do the UAT. The folder structure is the same for all the language. So it's honestly, it's a straightforward authoring experience. There is nothing complicated there.
Okay. So I think I need to take notes. You mentioned Thai, and I think Thai is a language that we don't have a localization yet for the Sidekick, but I think that could be something for us to add. Fortunately, our UI is small enough that it's not a lot of strings to localize.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I will try to keep that in mind, and if not, I will ping you later on, so that we can add this to our to-do list. And how big is your team of authors?
It's a bit, delicate topic at Sunstar. The thing is, in Japanese companies, most we have single peoples for a lot of different tasks, let's say. So for now, the team is quite narrow. We say narrow, yeah, it's quite small. But the goal is to extend the team thanks to Franklin, because to train people on how to connect to, for example, WordPress, and how to center elements and stuff, how to build the pages was quite difficult, and it required a lot of time. But now with Franklin, I personally build with my colleagues the training, and it pretty straightforward. We just need to tell them which blocks they need to use to be able to build, the layouts they want.
Right.
And I believe that now we can really onboard more people more easily, let's say. So we want to extend, for now, for Sunstone website, we have 3 people. Who are managing most of the languages as well. So every time there is a request for a specific country, they will handle it themselves, which is not, the best practical because, sometimes the information can be lost in between. So, the goal is really, thanks to Franklin now, extend this team, and have all the local people edit their language, their site, their own local sites. So this was the goal. And I think thanks to Franklin, it will be much easier to allow them to do that.
Great. Dennis, you mentioned 30 sites live already. A couple hundred in the pipeline. How big is the authoring team that you're working with, and what does it look like organizationally?
Sure. So yes, we do have 30 sites live already. I believe 29 actually. A few of those sites are internal, so they're kind of corporate or internal to our digital teams. But we definitely do have a majority of them as supporting our US consumer-facing brand sites. Right now, we're still in the process of sort of onboarding true business users, authors that is. The majority of the changes with the initial builds as well have been done by our technical teams or build teams. So we're still sort of really trying to push for that self-service adoption from a user, from a true business user kind of space. I would say, I was just trying to pull up the stats. We built some reporting directly into SharePoint. We're also doing some Power BI kind of testing to see how we can fetch all of our site owners and site members and try to maybe filter them by their little teams organization, right? Of how we can then boil them down to like the true business users. I was just trying to pull that up because I knew I had this question was coming. And I think we have about 150-ish unique total authors right now with the 30 plus 100 projects combined. And we're in the process of trying to boil that down to how many of them are actually the true business users by their business unit in the organization. That we can't really comment on yet without knowing. But I would say probably about 10 to 20%, if I were to guess.
Yeah. And
still a significant number.
Right. And at the moment, the way I'm reading it, most of this is going in terms of questions and support and enablement straight to you and your team. Have you been working on training material for authors to enable them?
Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm not a bit. Yeah, so we definitely have been. So we have tiered organizations to basically support all of our web channels. So we are the platform team, right? We work directly with Adobe. We're more technical. We look at the technical space, make sure that our ecosystem can support Adobe Franklin in all ways, security policies, automation workflows. We then have our delivery team who actually work directly with the markets in working with our platform, working with the core product, and then building and enabling to our authors. As a part of that organization, we of course have a self-service team that is fully focused on adopting the business users, and hence also have various training documentation, training sessions. They help us enforce standards in our portfolio, from a self-service point of view. In our use case, we have a volume of sites with small to medium pages, which I think is a little different than Adobe's kind of sort of current base of having perhaps handful of sites or with thousands or millions of pages, right? So we really focused on how we enable kind of SharePoint permissions and having a good standard of the drive structure across all of our sites so that authors have a little bit more of an easier experience and a standardized experience when they're working on multiple sites as well.
Right.
But we do have a specialized self-service team for sure.
Okay, very cool. And can you, and I obviously know a couple of things about your stack, and I'm not sure how much you're at liberty to disclose. So can you tell us what content management system you've been using prior to Adobe Experience Manager?
Sure. So I think we had two popular offerings prior to Adobe Franklin or ES. One of which was a kind of a customized version of Drupal, which was pretty popular back then. We then moved towards a more Jamstack static website build solution. And as a part of that, even though it's all pros and cons, right? It wasn't necessarily WYSIWYG. It was a lot more technical. We needed maintenance teams to even maintain content. You know, with that solution as we moved off of Drupal, but then we noticed we were missing the self-service piece. So we then built a in-house CMS that published that stack, a Jamstack site. We'd just be able to update your content, and then it would literally just a bot would just commit and then deploy from a GitHub repo with the content included. But then all development and authoring would go within our in-house CMS. That was, of course, a little sort of challenging. There was a lot of open source bits, but also proprietary parts that went into that CMS. It was almost a decade-long journey. And I keep hearing a little bit about AEM legacy as well, and how sort of, its difficulty points and a little bit of, trying to fulfill everybody's request. And I can definitely relate a little bit to that as well, with that in-house experience a while back. Before, of course, then we met Adobe Franklin and the Adobe team and started this endeavor 9 months ago, which now Adobe Franklin is definitely being pushed as the platform of choice.
Right. Okay. And Livia, I think you mentioned a couple of content management systems that have been supporting your work in the past. Can you give us a quick list once again? I think I heard Oracle, I heard AEM.
Yeah, I mean, AEM at Cognizant Net-Centric, of course, since the beginning.
Yeah.
In previous work, previous roles I had in other organizations, I worked with Oracle, which had, I think, the typical kind of drag and drop sort of system. And then, of course, WordPress for smaller organizations.
Right.
But so far in my experience, because again, I work in Google Docs all the time with Google Drive, and I know this platform, I'm much more comfortable with EDS as like an actual content author.
Yeah.
So
as a content author, how many pieces of content are you working on in parallel, and what's your publishing cadence?
Okay, well, we're not I'm not gonna. Please don't compare those numbers to.
No, it's not. I'm not trying to make this a competition here, right? Just right. But
no, of course. Probably 10 at the same time.
Right,
anything from reference cases to white papers to short articles to thought leadership. Maybe more, sometimes less. It really depends. Sometimes we work with video as well. I mean, and then landing pages, of course, any updates. And Katrin and I always work with 2 languages because we have everything in German as well as in English.
Right.
For most of what we have, except for articles. So we are like the team,
Right.
the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm jumping in here. Just a question too, because I was working with Livia and Katrin together, and that's why I want to ask Katrin, because I heard there was a little bit of a challenge during the migration, and I think it was not so easy just working in parallel on 10 pieces like Livia said. Maybe it was a little bit more challenging.
I mean,
maybe you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the main challenge was that, I mean, at least Livia is working on content. You know, I'm not a content author. I'm not. My job is actually more field marketing, sponsorship. So I worked as well. I work with the sales guys. Then suddenly it was said, okay, we're gonna migrate the website, and we need you to take care of the website. I was like, I don't know how to maintain a website. So, because for me, I mean, I'm based for 15 years in Spain. So in a lot of companies, I'm usually like the only native speaker German. So I'm used to having people sending to me Excel files with I need this in German. So this is what I've done. Or usually this is where my content authoring usually ended. And then of course sometimes you see that on the website, and I mean some native speakers here, you know, German can be very, very long, especially I'm from a linguistic, I'm from a writing background, so
Yeah.
it can be very long, and then on the website it needs to be rather short. So then I handed this in, and then later I saw it and I said, yeah, now I need you to change this again. And then, like it was said before, then things just get lost and on the way, you know. And now I see it, I don't like it, I change it directly. So I thought I'm not a content author. What do you want me to take care of the website? But now I'm so happy that I have the direct access. You know, it's so
Yep.
fast, it's so easy, and especially the German page was always behind. You know, like Livia did changes, I didn't see it. People forgot the German side existed, but now it's instant. It's like, well, now we really have the content live on both sides yeah, pretty much in parallel. So it's in better shape than it ever was.
Yeah.
Mhm. So you are really the team, as you said. I think are there more authors? I
Yeah.
think
No,
We
we are
have
the team.
Yeah, we are the team. This is true. We have a colleague who wants to learn, so we'll probably have to start onboarding her next year. And then one of our colleagues who's in charge of the brand identity and creative has access and goes in and changes visuals as per the guidelines and all this. So, but no, it's really just Katrin and me. Mostly Katrin.
Yeah. So for me, and I'm taking care of the aem-live website, as you know. Um, I think it's really one part of this that's making it great is obviously the ease of use, right? But what I think is most powerful is the ability to just bring in other people, right? So we started well, Dominic and I have been discussing, hey, should we have a page for our recordings? And we spent more time discussing the community page and thinking, oh yeah, we should do it, than actually creating it. And last week, I just sat down, built out the framework, sent it over to Dominic. Dominic made a couple of changes, did a couple of things where he said, okay, I'm just going to copy this from the homepage because I think it looks good. We found that we needed some additional functionality for dealing with timestamps and time zones, right? Because our recording is happening. Our recording is happening at 9 a.m. Central European time, but I don't know what this is in all other times, and sometimes I'm getting it wrong, and sometimes we have time zones like India that are half an hour off. So we built a quick component that is dealing with timestamps now, and actually giving you the ability to download ICS, and having the authoring of this site not just in the hands of a single individual, but making it a group exercise is really, really powerful, right? Because now I can just make sure that I take care of the things that are complicated. And the things that are complicated are essentially new functionality on the one hand, and making sure that the tone of the entire site is right, and that everything fits together. But I don't have to be the writer, and I don't have to be the bottleneck for every single page that is going out there. So while I'm thinking about the next question, I'm seeing a couple of new people here. The way we work is we typically turn on the camera, make this as interactive as possible. So if you can, and if you have a camera, and if you're not looking completely disheveled this morning, please turn on your camera. We'd like to see you. Obviously, we'd also like to hear your questions and your experiences. So thanks everyone who just turned on the camera, and that brings me to the next question, which is about editorial workflow and approval. So from what I've heard is most of the sites here are working with relatively small authoring teams. So what is the process from writing to getting it live? What does it look like for you? And I'm going to start with Dejan because I haven't heard from him in a while.
Okay, so as I mentioned, our group of authors, let's say, are quite small now. So they are all doing the same thing. So they are all like editing, approving, and publishing, their own content, right?
Right.
So they are the same team for now, We didn't really have let's say, an organized structure of approving, publishing content. So it's not like a regular workflow where there is like multiple teams. Ones are building the content, the other one integrating or authoring the content, and then there is like a step of approval. Here it's just like someone goes to Franklin, builds the content, previews it, maybe shares with some colleagues, and then it goes live.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's news, news articles, press releases. The problem is we couldn't, even if we wanted, to do this on WordPress, previous systems, WordPress, and I don't know what it was before. It was not possible for normal, let's say, authors, to build complex landing pages or, release new content, So that's why now, thanks to Franklin, I believe it will be more easier for them to build these landing pages, other content than just releasing news pages or news releases or press releases.
Yeah.
So I believe we already discussed about that because we have our digital team is providing services for Sunstar Gum brand, which we have more than 30 markets now. We have more than 50 authors. We have a good workflow there. We have a process of approval, everything. So we will try to implement same logic for the corporate websites. The problem, we don't have the same team, but we are trying, to push our resources, towards also providing services to the corporate websites as well. But yeah, for now it's mainly when people want to publish something. In the past they were just coming to me. Since I was full stack web dev, I could go there and edit, and really try to use the same components and looks, follow the guidelines, UI guidelines, UX guidelines. But we don't have anything in place for now.
Right. Okay. And Katrin and Livia, what's your approval workflow look like?
It's the best one. Is Livia creates the content, sets up the page like she likes it, and when she's done, she just adds a comment and says, Katrin, this page is ready. Please set it up in German whenever you're ready. And then I block some time and then do it, and then we have identical pages. So that's maybe normal for other people, but for us it never happened like this because, like I said, it was easy to forget the German one. And at some point I realized, oh, wait a minute, I haven't changed this. I don't have this. Why do you have this? So we are really happy with how it's working now.
Yeah,
sorry, Lars.
I think one of the things that I noticed is that when publishing is so easy, you get way more relaxed to make after the fact changes, right? You publish something, you found out, oh, there's something that we can do better. I'm just going to fix it and publish it through instead of saying, yeah, let's have a big review workflow to make sure that this never happens again. Yeah, it's going to happen again, but we can fix it quickly. So, Livia, I cut you off. Sorry for that.
No, I mean, since I work on content from taking in business needs to transforming it into the formats and the messages that we need, I kind of see the whole process, and you'd be surprised, but I actually, when I work with writers, because we have a content agency, and our in-house experts like Andreas Haller here, we work in a different Google Doc. I like to keep things still separate because every now and then, yeah. And then I cut paste what I need from the final version into EDS. So I keep things clean and separate because you never know, maybe someone will add the social media copy at the bottom and it publishes and you're like, wait, that's not what's supposed to be there. That's part of the process. That happened once when we were kind of collaborating and someone mixed up the documents. So having a bit of like a narrow process is better, and not everyone having access to the actual final public version is probably safer. But I have a few things ongoing with a UX writer, and so I literally copied an existing landing page, put it into the folder that she has access to, and she's actually doing copy work in something that's already set up for. So I'll just copy paste it again back into the live page.
Right.
So that's kind of an example of some of the variety of ways that we work in that way. And it's perfect because they can kind of see, the component layout, they kind of learn EDS and how our columns work and all this, and it just gets easier from there.
Yeah. Okay. And Dennis, you probably guessed that this was a setup to asking you about your publishing workflow and how easy it is.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think we probably have the most complicated and rigorous review workflow built into Adobe Franklin or EDS out of probably everyone else. I personally really like the simplicity of having preview and publish, but due to our how regulated and sensitive sort of our industry is in the healthcare pharma space, we unfortunately can't really retain that simplicity due to the counterpart of the, again, having regulation and needing to get external approvals for the content that is actually being published publicly from within. So when we first started, basically all of our, regardless of our offerings, right? Adobe Franklin or previous, we have one shape or form a hard requirement of a reveal workflow that includes an interim immutable environment to what you're requesting almost or desiring to push to live, which then again gets externally reviewed by medical bodies to then give the go-ahead to push changes. Now, of course, it's not for all sorts of changes. If it's a typo or a punctuation change or maybe a sentence that is not sort of within that sort of a need, then of course you can just push your way through. But for most of the time, also with I guess how big of an authoring scope we have globally, right? We're looking at probably around 800, 900 editors or authors from the business globally, of course, outside of Adobe as well, but eventually, our Adobe Franklin portfolio will only be aiming towards that. We worked with the Adobe team to basically put in an interim immutable reviews environment within our publishing workflow. So from preview, with I assume most of us in this call are used to seeing a publish button, we actually don't have one. We have a move to review button, which you can almost kind of cherry pick your pages into this review bucket. And then what happens in the review environment is you get the updates from what you pushed from preview, and you get everything else that's already live on production. And then it gives you this sort of readily functionally available interim environment, if you will, with an accurate sitemap that can also be used to capture, which is another need of ours, because the medical bodies that review the content don't review the website, they review kind of PDF exports. So all in all combined, we had to build in a front end experience.
Yeah.
To be fair, when we first started, because it's SharePoint, right? We also looked into things like using the checkout feature, which I thought would also have been neat. But because of future use cases, potentially to have multiple reviews at the same time, which is just making it more complicated, but also a need for some of our brand teams, we wanted to go ahead with a Sidekick, sort of a more environment-based solution.
Yeah, and I remember the discussions we had about trying to wrap our head around your review workflows, your review requirements, right? And always having the looming threat of a big US-based 3-letter agency, not approving whatever we come up with, was quite an interesting experience, right? And you all know that that AEM traditionally had very powerful workflows, and with Edge delivery services, we are leaning into the simplicity, right? So so finding something that is still legal in the most narrow sense of the word, but also simple enough that it can be understood, that it can be trained easily. That was quite an interesting experience, and I'm wondering when we are going to see other customers adopting the review solution, and what we are going to land with, if this ever makes it into the product as a general feature, right? Because at the moment it's really the case that that among multiple hundred live sites, or multiple hundred live sites and multiple dozen customers, your review workflow is definitely standing out as the most complicated and most ambitious one. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you summarized it well. It's really trying to find that balance of meeting the need, right? Medically and legally in our case, as well as trying to retain that simplicity. And I think where we landed is probably the sweet spot, the best we could.
Right. So Livia, you mentioned working with an external contributor, getting that contributor to understand the various blocks that you have on your page. How many different blocks are there on the NetCentric side, and how many of these do you use regularly? And maybe the question of how many there are is a question for Andreas, and the question of how many you use is a question for you.
I mean, we do have a library, like we have a library document, and I don't know if it's completely up to date, but it's there. And how many do I use? As many as possible. I mean, of course, like anything, it really depends on the design of the page, like what your objective with it is, and the campaign and all this. So we try to keep it simple, but has to have a good experience, right? Andreas, maybe you have something you want to add. Unprepared. Ooh.
Yeah, just count the blocks. We have around 25, some with variants, right? And yeah, that's probably the the biggest challenge to keep a good overview of them, right? And also from a development point of view for the authors, to keep them consistent and just I feel with Edge delivery, there's a lot of possibility for the developer to mess up the authoring experience or make it great. Like depending what blocks and variants and stuff you are building there and how flexible they can be used.
Yeah.
Maybe even more as with the traditional AEM stuff, but yeah, I'm not sure there. You can also mess things up there.
Yeah,
But it's different skill set to learn.
right. Yeah, and in my experience, the biggest factor, the biggest contributing factor to having a good authoring experience is authors telling developers what they need, and not the other way around, right? It should always be led. The authoring experience should always be led by the authors, because they know what kind of content they want to publish. They know the problems that they're dealing with, instead of authors or designers coming up, instead of designers or developers coming up with 15 different variants of how to style a 3-column component, because in the end, as an author, you can keep maybe 2 or 3 variants in your head, and these are the ones that you're going to use, and it's better to polish 1 or 2 variants instead of keeping 50 half-baked components around. Dejan, what is the complexity in terms of blocks for the sites that you're managing?
For the first website that we migrated, sunstarengineering.com, we didn't have that much of complexity, I would say, and it was pretty straightforward. Our 3 corporate websites, sunstar.com, sunstarengineering.com, and sunstarfoundation.org, they share the same look and feel, but there is still some different blocks and components, let's say, and maybe even some discrepancy in colors. So for the sunstar.com websites, we had quite a lot of different blocks styles, especially the column styles, so we had to find a compromise. So instead of building new blocks, we built new variants.
Mm-hmm.
We try to adapt as much as possible, to make it more easy also for the authors, because at some point, as you said, it's the authors. It's how easy for them it will be. It's not for us, because for me, it doesn't matter how complex it is. I will always find a solution to align it the way I want. But it's more for the authors. So, now we are in the let's say in the last phase of the migration. We are just finalizing the UAT. But one of the most important work that we will need to do is post migration is to go through all these components. First, build everything. Build kind of a design system first in Figma. Do a workshop with all the authors, ask them what kind of components they want to keep, what kind of components they want to have, define all these styles, and then integrate this, maybe like refactor this later on. And I think it's more easier also for the migration process and integrating front end when we have the design system up front, so we can build everything based on the design system. If we don't have this, sometimes, we just have to kind of, create custom blocks, for 1 of 2 use case scenarios,
right,
which is not really ideal. And it also takes a lot of time, and then can break also other things that are built. So it's been more challenging, let's say, for sunstar.com, because we had these many components and variants. But we don't have also more than, I believe, I just checked now on the GitHub, like maybe probably 40, bit less than 40, something like this. So it's not that huge.
right. And I know from Livia that she's a Google Docs person. I know from Dennis that you are on the Microsoft stack. Dejan, what's your authoring environment? I didn't ask about this.
It's also Microsoft. We are using Office 365, which is now Microsoft 365. So we are using our intranet is on SharePoint. So everybody is used to working in SharePoint, or the, let's say, OneDrive document library ecosystem.
Right.
And what I did is we had already a team in Microsoft Teams, which was dedicated, to all the authors for this corporate website, all this, website management team, let's say. So I just built the content. The content is there. Actually, it's living inside the team, the site of the Microsoft team.
Yeah. That's roughly the that I would say that's roughly a representative mix that we're seeing, right? Most of our the customers that are using the Google stack are typically younger companies and smaller companies, and established companies. They always have a long-standing history with Microsoft. So for better or worse, that's Word is their favorite word processor. And to go quickly back to the number, or to the complexity and the number of blocks, are you ever doing things like taking a look at what blocks are in use and basically retiring the least used ones? Is this kind of curation something that you're doing? And that's a question for all of you.
So I mean, I can start if since I'm actually, we didn't have this because we are still in the middle of a migration, I would say.
Right.
For sure, we will have this post migration because there is some blogs that we really can retire. The website wasn't touched, and as I mentioned, whole budget was going to keeping the website, these 3 websites on live support, because we have such complex infrastructure on Amazon, and it was just consuming all our budget. It was going down frequently, so we had to pay our agencies, to revive it, and keep it alive for the time being. So for now, we didn't really have time and, let's say, resources to handle this. But as I mentioned previously, now we have the full support of my team, which is the DTSS team. In the past, it was managed by the PR team, which were only 2 people. So it was not easy for them, to work to handle these issues. But it will be for sure the next step after migration is go and try to optimize as much as possible and make it easier for the authors, because the point is really to push as much as content as possible, to have the most optimized website as possible, SEO wise, issue wise, speed wise.
Excellent. Yeah. Great. And Dennis, I saw you unmuted yourself, so.
Yeah, so in the lines of reporting against blocks usage, we have built a small script that I think runs periodically. I don't know exactly what the parameter there is, but it gives us basically a quick indication of how many. It scans through the repos, right, the blocks folders, and it gives us the use of how many exact blocks, the count, and how many different variations there are. Right, in our use case, we have many sites, so we tend to have like 50 accordions that are called accordions. So they're all custom blocks on a per site basis, and we kind of like to track that and see, do all these 50 sites really need 50 different accordions, or can they do with one on the platform level, a core accordion, right, for example, and they all use the same one, right? Also keeps it clean, standardized, both from an authoring perspective, from a table syntax perspective, all around, right? Also the way it's coded and styled. So we are looking into those. I'm abstracting obviously all the technical complexity from this conversation, but we also have kind of a design system of our own with the blocks we enable on like a platform site that is automatically inherited on all of our sites, which allows for those sites that are designed based on a design system, authors can simply just use the Word docs, right, and the content drive to reference the existing blocks that they already inherit without needing any developers or any technical development. That's of course 100% based on the design system, right? If there are any gaps or if it's a custom kind of design, then of course then you need to build custom blocks. But that is exactly what we are kind of tracking to see over time. Is there more usage of these core blocks, or are these sites individually needing to create their own?
Right. Yeah, and so we also, and if you're on Slack, you can just ask Data Desk. what your most seen blogs are on the pages, and as you mentioned, I did this analysis across all of our customer sites, and I can tell you I've seen more carousels than on a state fair, and more accordions than on a marching band. But having these tools and having the ability to see what is being used, and then essentially retiring components that are not seeing enough use, is something that can help with just the development effort on the one hand, but also with author enablement, right? Because you don't have to explain all of the variants; you just explain the ones that are really relevant and that are being seen by visitors. Okay, so we have a couple more minutes left, and typically we get a couple questions from the audience. So if you have a question, now is not a bad time to ask it. And if we don't get questions, then we are just going to end it. Okay, so if there are no more questions, then I'll want to thank our invited guests, Dennis, Katrin, Livia, Dejan, for joining us. It was really great to hear your experiences, to hear where you are going, and thanks everyone else who dialed in, who participated. And as you know, we do this every other Tuesday. We also do this every other alternating Thursday in a more US friendly time zone. So happy to see you next week on Thursday, and see the rest of you next Tuesday or the Tuesday after next. Thanks everyone, and of course we're going to post the recording on YouTube a couple days in the future, depending on how fast I am to share the recording, and how quick Dominic is in editing it. Thanks everyone. Great to see you. Bye bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining. Enjoy the week.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.